Is this when you were in training for CIC?
Oh God, yeah. This is in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Now this guy. She'll show you. He's right here, Remy Fulcher. You got his picture. Now this is a story in itself. This guy and I got to be very good friends. His name is Remy Fulcher. His father was an American soldier in World War I. He went to France, married a French gal, has this boy, and Remy comes back to America, and they grab him and they draft him into the service, and they put him in intelligence because naturally he spoke French fluently. So this is his picture, what happened was that he and I got to be very good friends because I could speak French, and I got to practice it, with him. And he was in training with me, and then he left before I did from the training post. And the ship that he was on landed in Casablanca, and the ship that he was on was sunk just off the coast. And a lot of the guys died in that ship, and he survived. And he went on into Africa and then served there. Then years go by, I'm looking for him all over France. I thought maybe, because I knew he wanted to be a doctor, and so did I, so we had something in common. So I used to check in Paris, France all the time. I'd call when I was in business, and I'd go over there. I'd try to find him, couldn't find him. So I have a beautiful daughter by the name of Pearl Lynn Gorgie, my very precious angel from heaven. And what happens is that this guy comes down here to watch a football game. And she can tell you what football game was. What was it,
University of Oregon for the bowl game, the Rose Bowl. And I was in charge of the front office. And I was just walking through, and this guest came to the counter, and he says to me, "How are you doing today? Will you start talking?" Next thing he tells me is, "Oh, just out of the blue, I was in World War II, and I worked as a spy in World War II," and I said, and he starts telling me this whole story about his life and how that he was a spy out of the blue. And I said, "Wow," I said, "that's absolutely amazing." I said, "My father did that as well." And he just kind of looked at me. He says, "What's your name?" I told him, "My name's Pearl Gorgie." I knew a Gorgie. I went to training school with a Gorgie. I said, "Well, maybe it's my father." I said, "Do you want to call my father? You want me to call my father? Or do you want to, let me get you two hooked up. Maybe you could do lunch or breakfast or something of that nature." And then all of a sudden he goes upstairs. Probably about 15 minutes later, he comes back downstairs and says, "I know your father. Your father was one of my best friends. Let me call your father right now." So we call my dad, and...
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We weren't home when he called. We were at the doctor's office. He left word on the machine. And then when we came home, he heard the message.
Is it like a ghost?
He started crying. He started crying when he heard this man's voice. He couldn't believe it. And then Frank called the hotel. Both of them cried. They couldn't believe that they got in touch with each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't believe when Pearls was saying my father. He says, "No, not your father.
Your grandfather."
My grandfather, yeah. No, she says, "My father." Couldn't believe it. We didn't meet them that night because they had our other arrangements. And the next day we went over to the hotel and we had dinner with
And
them.
didn't this man say he doesn't usually chat up people, or he...
I would believe that.
He told you this story.
Yeah, it was absolutely,
Oh.
a fate.
Oh, yeah.
A fate meeting.
Yeah.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he and his wife are like very
That's right.
private people. He's a physician.
Yeah.
And they're both very, very private. Yeah. And not even, you would think, well, maybe she had a name tag that he saw the name. But not even that.
And I had heard of, my father spoke of
yeah.
Remy Fulcher every year when we would go to our conventions, because they had conventions where all of my father's, the people who were in World War II would come together, and they would have these big events, and every time he would ask people, "Hey, where do you live? Do you know Remy Fulcher?" Whenever someone new would come into the crowd, he would ask them.
That's
and
right.
so I recalled the name, but...
I was looking for Remy Fulcher all the time because he and I got to be very good friends, you know. And he could speak French, and a lot of those guys were a little afraid. You know, he spoke with an accent, foreign accent, you know. And I could tell, and I'd pry him, you know. I say, "La monde, what do you think? You know, the Germans. What do you think of them?" And so on. La Bush, you know, he calls them the Bush, you know, La Bush. The
But
German.
he actually was, Remy was actually, mother and dad were divorced, and he actually was living in France.
Yeah,
And really what he came here for was for the military training, but he actually wanted to be part of the French army. He didn't want to be part of the American army, but the Americans then took him. So he came here somehow on some kind of a plan for the French government, for the training.
yeah,
But then the Americans took him because his father was American.
yeah.
But while he's back in training school, he finds out about Remy Fulcher's ship going down. And then not too long after, you were shipped out.
That's right.